Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Tyler.
Hi, Tyler.
I've watched this woman in her struggles. I've watched this woman in the worst part of her addiction. And the fact that she's sober and doing what she's doing today is nothing short of a miracle. And it's because of her walk that I was able to start mine. I mean, she showed me every step of the way that it can be done. Even when I was rebellious and I stepped away, she still supported me. And I just thank you for that, Mom. And I hope y'all are really prepared to hear something, because this woman's story is nothing to tamper with or play with. It's an act of God. Come on, Mom.
Wow.
I can't even see over this thing. Do you? You're telling me. Let me have it. Can you guys hear me just fine?
Oh,
Back
yeah.
there? Yeah? How's that?
Yeah.
All right. What you're going to hear tonight, my name's Kirsten, by the way, and I'm a reformed alcoholic. And I say that I'm reformed because of my religious beliefs. I don't claim that over my life anymore, because God has delivered me through working these 12 steps in this program. And I'm going to explain to y'all what happened to me. And this may be kind of a different story for some of y'all, because you're not used to hearing this kind of story here. But this story started in this house.
Wow.
And took me to where I am today. So I'm going to incorporate some poetry into my testimony, because that's part of my story. And we're just going to take it from there.
Yay!
I like this. All right. Well, I was born here in Houston, Texas. Halloween of 1969. My parents were divorced when I was born. My dad had told my mom that she was getting fat, and he ran off with another woman. So that's how my abandonment issues probably started, was right then and there. My mom was married 5 times and always chose the men in her life over the children. And I was predominantly raised by my grandmother. During the course of my growing up, as far back as I can remember, there was a propensity to change the way I felt. And the family drank a lot. It was a drinking family. Lots of beer on the weekends. The family would get together. They would send the kids to the ice box to grab the beers, and I'd open the beer and sip the beer on the way back to whoever I was taking it to. So I know that I was good and lit, 4 or 5 years old. Christmas, they'd make brandy-wine punches, and everybody would get their little thing, and I'd get a shot glass full. So I started stealing cigars and smoking cigars in the 2nd grade. And I also started skipping school in the 2nd grade. There was an abandoned house behind where we lived, and we skipped school and went over there. It just seemed that I was destined from the beginning to take the difficult road. I wouldn't listen to anybody. I was very hard to discipline. I thought that I knew everything. I was too smart. So my grandmother that raised me in church. And she was a very strict disciplinarian with a switch. She'd slap me, hit me, yell at me, scream at me. And through going to church on Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, every church function that they had, vacation Bible school, I was baptized when I was 11. Because all my friends, when they were baptized, they got these real big baptismal cakes. And I thought that if I got baptized, I'd get a cake too. Well, I didn't realize that the families were paying for these cakes. And my family didn't have any money. So I got baptized, and I didn't get a cake. And I think that was my first disappointment in God, where I had expected something that I was going to receive from being in the church, and I didn't get it. And my life just kind of seemed to take a turn after that. We had the second husband that my mother had, my brother and sister's father, was a very good con artist, and he worked for Mercedes-Benz Norman Scott out here on 59 for a lot of years, and he had a lot of dealings with doctors and lawyers and dentists and stuff like that. And he had created an imaginary corporation, and he was getting investments from these people that he was selling the cars to for this corporation per se. And the FBI came and tore up our house and took everything that we had and froze the bank accounts, and we moved from a house in Nassau Bay to a trailer park in Pasadena, Texas when I was in the 6th grade. My grandmother lived there in a 1-bedroom trailer, and the entire family moved into a 1-bedroom trailer. And you talk about culture shock from coming from the life that I lived to coming to Pasadena. I had a very big mouth. And I had never had to back that up physically. I just talked to people, and I could talk my way out of any given situation until I got to Pasadena, Texas. So being one of the smallest kids in school with the biggest mouths in school got me in a lot of trouble and a lot of fights. And I didn't fit in, and they picked on me a lot. So in order to find a crowd that I would be safe in, that could protect me from the guys who were coming after me all the time, because I still hadn't quite learned to keep my mouth shut, I started hanging out with the stoner group in the 6th grade. So the heavy drug use, by the time I was 13, I had a needle sticking out of my arm. And my friends and I were hitchhiking around Pasadena, Texas, pulling these little con games on the people that would pick us up, because I could make myself cry at the drop of a hat. So they'd pull over, they'd give us a ride, we'd get into the car, and my friend would run the scam on them, and I'd just look at the driver and cry. And she'd tell them that our parents beat us, this is my little sister, and we haven't had anything to eat, and all this stuff. And they'd give us money and drop us off at the McDonald's up on Spencer Highway, and our dope dealer lived in the apartments right behind the McDonald's, and we'd go over there and get our stuff. So then we started talking and said, well, you know, if we can hitchhike around here, we should go to Galveston. We need to be hanging out on the beach. So I'm 13, 14 years old, and we're going down to Galveston, staying in Galveston for the weekend, and then turning around and coming back home, going back to school, doing our thing. And then we get the idea, well, if we can hitchhike here, we could go all the way to California. So when I was 14 years old, we hitchhiked from Houston to California. They picked us up in Bakersfield. We didn't make it to LA. And my friend's parents flew us back to Houston. My mother at that time had moved, and she was living in Florida with my brother and my sister. And the state of Texas said I could no longer reside here, that I was too much of a problem, that they were going to put me in the system in Texas, and I was going to be in a detention center, and I was not getting out. You know, and I've left some stuff out running away from the Chimney Rock Center, and they couldn't do anything with us, and we're stealing people's credit cards and going to the mall, and I mean, we're into some really crazy stuff. So at this point, at 14, they sent me to Florida to live with my mom and my stepfather at the time. She had gotten remarried. I guess that was her 3rd or her 4th marriage at that time. Get down to Florida, and you know, I don't know if I was sexually abused when I was little. I know that I had odd behaviors that children shouldn't have. I knew things that I shouldn't have known, and I was doing things that I shouldn't have done, and enticing other children to do them at the same time. But I have no recollection of anything like that happening to me when my mom was married to my first stepfather. It was the second stepfather who came on to me in Florida, and when I told my mother what he had done, she called me a liar. I was too afraid to stay in the house with him. And after I had told my mother, they had gotten into a big fight, and he had beat my mom, and he had left, and I had stayed home from school that afternoon. And I heard him pull up in the driveway, and I ran and I hid under a bunch of dirty clothes. And he came in and he jumped on my mom and he was beating my mom in the living room. And I could hear what was going on, and I knew that if I made a break for it, I could probably get to the neighbor's house because the neighbor was home. So I took off running as fast as I could out the front door. He was pretty close to the front door, and he came after me. And I had longer hair at the time, and I could feel him trying to get me by the back of the hair as I'm running. And I'm running so fast, and I can't stop to open the woman's door, so I plowed through her screen and rolled into her living room with him behind me. And she called the police, and he got out. They took him to jail for the night, and then they let him come back home. And my mom said they were going to work things out. So I ran away, and I hitchhiked by myself this time from Florida back to Texas, which is, it was shortly after I got back here that I met Tyler's dad. I was 15 and he was 17, and he sold a lot of drugs, and he was cool to hang out with, and he had cool friends and stuff. And I called him and I told him to pull around to the back of my grandma's trailer, and he stopped his car back there, and I started throwing all my stuff out the window. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm running away and I'm going with you." So he drove me over to his mother's house, and he says, "Mom, this is Kirsten. Kirsten, this is Mom. If anybody calls looking for her, you haven't seen her." And the family hid me in that house for 10 months. And my family didn't know where I was. So I had dropped out of school after I had failed, I don't know, numerous times. Every time I looked around, I was getting thrown out of one school into another school here and there. Nobody could keep me in school. And so I dropped out of school again, and this time I'm 15 and I'm still in the 8th grade. When the stepfather who had been arrested by the FBI, I think he did 5 years in the feds, when he got out, he came looking for me. And he was the only one who had the concern that a child had ran away from home and was living with some guy in his family, doing drugs and having sex and doing all these things at 16 years old. And he pulled me out of the house, took me back to my mother's, and paid for me to go to private school. So the school was nice enough to put me in the grade that I belonged in. They put me in the 10th grade, and I got on the cheerleading squad. But I quit the cheerleading squad because they were having keg parties after school, so I couldn't go to practice. I had to make the keg party. And the summer between 10th grade and 11th grade, I got pregnant. And my grandmother said, "You can't have a baby and that baby not have a name. You have to get married." So I married my first husband. And we did a lot of drugs. We did a lot of drugs. We sold a lot of drugs. That's all that our world revolved around, was drinking and drugging all the time. But I didn't have a problem at that point. I could pick it up or put it down. It was not something that was ruling and reigning over my life. This is just what I did. This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1987, I got my first felony because I went home with some guy from the bar, and I wouldn't have sex with him, and he threw me out of the house, and I took off walking, and I passed the car, and the keys were in the automobile. So I just got in the car, I was going to drive myself home. So my first felony in 1987 was unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and they put me on 10 years deferred probation. Well, I skipped town, and I never completed that probation, and I guess at that time they didn't have the computer systems that they do now, because it just went away somewhere. I don't know where it went, but it just went away, okay? Maybe you can say that was the grace of God. It shows up on my record. I don't know what I discharged, I guess. I guess they discharged it. I don't know. So I'm having problems with the husband, and we're fighting all the time. And I'll tell you, I don't remember a day looking in the mirror and I didn't have a black eye. There was always physical violence within the house. Never enough money to pay the bills, moving around all over the place, coming up, going down, coming up, going down. And I left and I went to Dallas and stayed with a friend of mine. It was in Dallas that I tried to commit suicide with my 2 children in my friend's house. And I slit my wrist. But I mean, I really slit my wrist. I got all the nerves, all the tendons, the artery. I got it all. And my mother flew down from Virginia, and she picked up my kids and took my kids back to Virginia. And somehow after 15 hours of surgery and them tying my hand back together, I convinced the psychiatrist to let me go. And he did. So I end up, things don't work out. You know, I get back with the husband again. We're trying to work things out. It doesn't work out. I fly to Virginia, and I'm going to get my life together. I got my GED, and I go to nursing school. And I quit doing the hard drugs. I'm just drinking. And I drink myself all the way through nursing school. Get my nursing license. I've sent the kids back to their dad to live here. We're still married. And I didn't think he'd ever divorce me. So I get my nursing license, and I'm coming back to Houston to work and get my kids. And then he files abandonment on me. And I'm a nurse now, so he gets me for $500 a month in child support. Wow. It just freed up my time and made it possible for me to drink and drug more. I was angry at the world. You know, somehow they had stolen my children from me. And the fact of the matter is I gave the kids away. I told him to come get the kids. I couldn't keep the kids and finish my last year of school. I needed him to take the kids. I gave the kids away because they were in my way. I couldn't do what I needed to do for me. Come get them. And I'll get them when I'm settled and have my life together. And that never happened. So, I'm not going to go through all the mass boyfriends and relationships and illicit marriages and all that stuff, because there's a lot more important things that I want to talk about. But I did get married to another guy in 2000. And I thought that, you know, he was going to be the one. Thought he was a great guy, fantastic guy. We start fighting, and he starts hitting me. You know, but it wasn't the same kind of hitting, and it wasn't as often as the other guy. And he only treated me bad when he was barred out, and, you know, I made all the excuses. Sometime before 2000, let me just say this, 1998, I went into to New Hope over here. And when I hit the doors in New Hope, I was an atheist. And I remember the first meeting that I went to, I didn't realize what I had gotten myself into. I didn't know that this detox center was going to revolve around God. And when I got to the meeting and they said, God, I said, where have you brought me? And I yelled in the meeting, I don't believe in God. And the whole meeting shut down. You could hear a pin drop. And they looked at me, and they just went on about their business. Like I never said a word. I stayed there for 9 days, and I left with my friend because she got thrown out. But we were going to stay sober together. And we did. We stayed sober together for 90 days. 90 days we made it. And boy, I tell you what, I had a false sense of security then. I can quit for a whole 90 days and not pick nothing up. I can pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, do whatever I want with it. It ain't got me, I got it. And that was my mentality. So that was in 1998, 2000, I get married. And I'm doing the nursing thing, and I'm working around the medical center, and excuse me, and I'm picking and choosing the days and hours that I want to work. I'm doing the agency nursing. So that way I can smoke crack on the days that I'm not in the hospital. Okay? And this is working for me. All right? Now, in 2001, a year after I had been married, we're up in Dallas, and we're going to go out and have a drink. And I wrote this poem. It's called Ridiculed. Greenville Avenue was just getting live as we pulled the truck into the shuck and jive. Oysters on the half shell would be my plate, and Grand Marnier to seal my fate. We sat at the bar as the liquor flowed, laughing and talking of days long ago. The atmosphere changed on a dime the instant someone crossed the line. With a flippant comment his jealousy fueled, then began the ridicule. You're nothing but a nasty hoe. Get your things, it's time to go. I'll never forget how his eyes looked as he cursed me for every name in the book. Jealousy then turned to rage as he tripped the point to disengage. We argued as we drove down the road, headed back to our humble abode. He punched me once and I yelled, "Is that all you got?" Then 2 left hooks knocked me off my clock. I screamed in undescribable agony as I clenched my head between my knees. With the sudden realization of what he had done, he dumped me out so he could run. Ridiculed, beaten, and kicked to the curb, the sound of the sirens was the last thing I heard. I finally woke up in a hospital bed. They'd have to replace 3 bones in the right side of my head. A harmless thought, one might think, to stop at the bar and have a few drinks. And I follow that up with a quote from 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour.
Wow.
So I couldn't go to work. I got 3 plates, 9 screws, titanium all on the right side of my face. It had pulverized the maxillary, the lower orbital lobe. And they had to cut me on the inside of my mouth, peel all the skin back, remove all the bone fragments, and place the titanium in. Well, it set my eyeballs off. So I have a new shelf under this eye, and I can't see to drive. I have diplopia. And my, I can't, what's the vertigo? I'm dizzy. I can't put it together. And I can't go to work, but they've got this thing in Texas called Crime Victims Assistance. So all I did was have to show them my check stubs, and they were paying my weekly checks while I'm recuperating. So while I'm recuperating, I'm smoking crack. All those years of playing with it finally came to a head, and I remember the day that I woke up and I sat up in bed. And I said, the bitch got me. And I knew it was over. I knew the car was gone, the bank account was gone, the kids were gone. Any hope that I had of anything in this life was gone because I was sold out to the game and I wasn't coming back. When I left that day, I was not coming back. And there was nothing I could do about it because my choice in the matter had been taken over by something else. And I called into work, and I drove from Dallas to Mesquite, and there was a motel over there. And I stayed in that motel until I ran out of money. That began a downhill slope. And I had hooked up with some guy out there, and I couldn't work because I have to stay high. And my habit is a big habit. Between $400 and $450 a day. And so what we're doing is we're robbing little old ladies. And we're taking their purses and he's strong-arming them so that we can get our dope money. And we're driving through the mall. And this was my idea. This was my great idea that morning because we were going to go help my mom move. And I said no because I need to wake up. And I need it now, and you're going to get it for me, or you're not going to want to be around me for the next few hours until this gets done. And we drive through the mall parking lot, and he sticks his arm out of the window of the car to grab the lady's purse, and she won't let go. And we drug her through the parking lot. There was a good Samaritan who was watching all this happen who called the police. And they pulled us over. And I said, I was asleep, officer. I didn't see anything that happened. I don't know what's going on. I didn't have anything to do with it. Well, they arrested me and they held me for 30 days while it went to the grand jury. The grand jury didn't have enough evidence to indict me, and they let me go. And he got 25 years. Don't you know I stuck by him, though? You know. Yeah. That was an amends that I had to make when I had to write him after I had gotten sober 10 years later. And he said, I forgave you a long time ago. Never did find out who that lady was. Maybe that's why I get to take care of old people today. To do a living amends for the people that I hurt while I was out there in my addiction. So I left Dallas. I moved to Galveston with my mom. My family's still somewhat supporting me, enabling me to do the things that I feel the necessity to do. And it was just a sordid, twisted set of events from that point on. I still had my nursing license. And so I was able to work here and there. I was able to do some things. And I was over here at the Ship Channel Motel. I was smoking some dope over at the Ship Channel Motel. Mom had kicked me out. I couldn't go there anymore. My grandmother wouldn't let me in. I couldn't go there. I'm trying to do some things. I haven't really hit the streets prostituting yet. You know, I'm still able to maneuver some stuff. And I meet a guy over there who takes me to a dope house over off Telephone Road and leaves me there. I'm like, well, now I know where the dope is. Now I know where the dope's at, and I'm not leaving. So from 2003 to 2005, I lived on Telephone Road. And I worked the streets, earned my money, got a motel room. Some days I had a room, some days I was under the bridge. Some days I was trying to find a room, sometimes I was trying to stay here, stay there, man, but I was strung out for a good 2 years. And then in 2005, they started a big sting operation over there, and they're going to clean those streets up. And I sold some dope to an undercover officer. And that was my first manufacturing delivery charge. My first one, mind you. They sent me to Safe P. I did 10 months in Safe P. I got out. 9 days later, I was locked up on a possession charge. Picked up on Telephone Road. Turn around, I did 8 months at the Henley unit. And let me tell you something. Something out there on them streets. I think that when I was baptized, I know this may sound crazy, but this is what I believe, because I know when I came up out of that water, nobody had ever told me about the Holy Spirit. I didn't know what the Holy Spirit was, but I felt something descend on me. And God had sealed me as His child and protected me while I was out there. Because I was dead set on killing somebody or killing myself. But He spared me because He had a greater purpose in mind. This poem is called Stop, I Love You. This happened to me at the Blue Top Motel. My feet were tired. I'd been walking for days. It seemed like nothing was going my way. When on the road, I hit my lick, jumping into the ride of a $50 trick. So I took a detour off the stroll because I needed a minute to slow my roll. I bought some dope and hit my feet, traveling 3 blocks down the street. Into the convenience store for a pipe and some beer and out the door. Then a quick pit stop in the belly of hell. I got a room for an hour at the crack motel. I fixed my glass just the way that I liked. Man, this hit was going to be nice. So I slammed on a dime to blow my mind. Then God spoke in the smoke of my dope. I barely could maintain my grasp as the words appeared etched in the glass. Stop, I love you, my father said, because if you don't, you'll end up dead. And I threw that pipe into the wall, and I ran across the street to the Chinese store, and I said, what are y'all doing to my apparatuses? You can't be messing with the apparatus like that. Are you out of your mind? Somebody gonna hurt you. Now you're messing up my high, you know, because they had done this to my pipe. It wasn't God. God doesn't talk to people. So I get out of the Henley unit. It's 2006. And I'm going to stay clean. I'm done with the men. I'm not going to deal with none of that stuff anymore. I've got this. And I go to Angela's house here in Houston. I get me a girlfriend. Because that's going to fix everything. A woman knows how to treat a woman, right? Well, we relapse together. And then I find out while I'm out there turning tricks, she's sleeping with guys in the motel. And she's the butch. How disillusioned we have become. But I'll tell you, there was something that happened to me at the Henley unit in 2005. There was another little girl who was off the streets in Telephone Road who was in there with me. And her name was Sarah. And she came to me one day and she was crying. And she had a big book in one hand and she had a Bible in the other. And she said, "Kirsten, I don't know what to do with these. What do I do with these?" And I said, "Well, you put that Bible down, girl, and you read your big book if you want to get sober." And I walked off. And then something spoke to me and said, "How can you tell her to put down a book that you've never read?" I said, "Okay." Well, you know, my bunkie, she reads her Bible all the time. So I said, I pulled the thing out and I said, "I don't know what to do with this. But I feel like I need to read it so I can have the information in case anybody asks me." And she told me, she said, "Read Psalms 139 every night." So I started reading Psalms 139 every night. And I started praying. And something weird started happening. These little messages started coming in, and it wasn't me. But I knew these little messages were important. So I was writing down these little lines on all these little pieces of paper. Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning one night, something wakes me up. And says, "Pull out all that paper that you wrote all those little notes on." So it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've got all my stuff onto my bed, and I'm pulling all the papers out, and I'm pulling all the little notes that I've written on, and I'm laying them all on the bed. And the voice says, "Now put them in order." And this is what it was. It's called The Lady in Red. I walked the night, a lady in red, luring strangers to my bed, playing games of lies, lust, and manipulation, never fearing condemnation. I sold my soul for a hit of crack. I kept doing my dope, and I never looked back. I lost everything I cherished in life, my role as a mother, a daughter, and wife. My Heavenly Father must have frowned as He picked me up, then sat me down. Cuffed, shackled, and placed in prison, He'd hoped I'd make the right decision. Left to ponder the choices I'd made, I was graced with hope for brighter days. He offered His hand as the only way out, so I grabbed a hold without a doubt. Jesus then wiped the tears from my face,